Hi again. We're back in Suzuki Book 2, and this time we're working on number 6, which is called Bourree. Okay, so waltz and bourrée and saraband and gavottes and minuets, they're all dances. Okay, so generally they're going to be kind of upbeat, but we're going to, tempo-wise or speed-wise, but we can start this one off a little bit slower to practice it. This one's by Handel. He's a Baroque composer, and he lived at the same time, almost exactly, as Bach the dad. And they all lived in Germany, but Mr. Handel also wrote the chorus from Judas Maccabeus, so he wrote the very first one in this book as well. Okay, so Bourree for violas has nothing in the key signature, just like the waltz. So we're going to have a squishy 2 on our top 2 strings, and Bourree for the violins has 1 sharp, just like the waltz. So we're going to have a squishy 2 on our top 2 strings. All right, I'm going to play the first line. The first line doesn't have anything really crazy in it. It's got quarter notes, it has eighth notes, and it has 2 half notes. There are a couple slurs in there. Slurs are less important in this piece, but obviously put them in if you can do them. Okay, the very first note starts with a push, so you're going up towards the ceiling. And I'm going to go through just remembering squishy 2s. That's the biggest lesson from the first line. All right, here we go. Squishy 2, long note. Squishy 2. All right, so hopefully that's not too hard for you. When you get to the second line, the thing that you're going to notice is there are some sharp signs marked in. Okay, the sharp signs mean that even though we're preparing ourselves to have squishy 2s, they want you to have some high 2s. Not every 2 is going to be high now. So in measure 5, the second note for violas is an F, and it's marked as an F sharp. And the second note in the violins is a C, and it's marked C sharp. Now, not only will that F and that C be marked or played high, the rest of the ones in that measure will be played high. So there actually will be 3 high 2s in measure 5. So the second note, the fifth note, and the last note, those will all be high 2s. Don't forget that. Okay? Now, if you go to the end of the line, also you'll notice 1 extra additional F sharp or C sharp, depending on which instrument you're playing. So in total, there will be 4 high 2s on the second line. When you go up to the high string, so if you play a G or a C, those will not be sharped. All right, so I'm going to play at measure 5. Again, these are mostly eighth notes, so rhythmically, or the speed of the notes, that shouldn't be too difficult. Okay, measure 5, here we go. High 2, another one, a third one, squishy, back to high 2. Awesome. Okay, now this one, like the waltz, has a lot of this section in it. So if you can learn the first 2 lines, you can play most of the piece. All right, we just played the very first 2 lines. Sometimes it's written out so that the next 2 lines repeat. In the 2 books that I have, there's an actual repeat sign, so you'd go back and play the A section again. Okay, what I'd like you to do is skip down to the bottom, though, and not the last 2 lines, but 1 note before the last 2 lines. So it's actually the third line from the bottom, last note. And I'm going to play through there, and I want you to listen to it because it sounds very similar to the beginning. All right, so this is 3 lines from the bottom, the last note, and I'm going to go through the end. Squishy. High 2 because it's naturally natural, or an F sharp. Squishy, squishy. All right, so if you look at that, basically you're looking at the last line. That's where it becomes different. So if you compare the second line in the piece to the last line in the piece, can you figure out what is different? All right, I'm going to give it away. I'm going to tell you. So you can pause this if you want to figure it out on your own. So what happens is actually one note before the last line, we end up going down instead of going up. So at the first line, it goes yum bum and goes up. And on this second to last line, it goes yum bum and goes down one note. Okay. After that, everything's the same. Up the scale, up the scale, up the scale, up the scale. The thing is that the two up the scale sections are running parallel to each other. Now they're not in unison. It starts one note lower or two notes lower. And so it sounds similar, but it's not exactly the same notes. But if you can play measure 5 or the second line, you should be able to play the last line. Okay, so that leaves us just two lines or almost two lines in the middle of the piece. If you have a repeat sign written in, that's where we're going to start. If not, it's going to be it could be after the fourth line. Both of mine have repeat signs. So in my case, I'm doing one note before, it's a measure 9. Measure 9. Okay, you're going to notice you're up pretty high. So you're playing on your highest string and you're playing 3 fingers or 4 fingers. The hardest part about this is when we play 3. 1, 2, 3. Our fingers naturally will have a big space between 1 and 2, and they're going to be super close here between 2 and 3. In this case, we have squishy 2s, so I have to pull my second finger backwards so it touches my first finger. And when I do that, my third finger has a tendency to want to follow. It doesn't like to stretch out there. It's kind of working pretty hard for that. So what you have to do is you have to make sure that that third finger stretches as far as it needs to. Now, we also will have a fourth finger. And so all of you who I talk about trying to keep your wrist nice and straight, in order to stretch your fourth finger as far as it needs to be, your wrist has to be straight. That's why we yell at you all the time. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to start after the repeat sign. Probably for most of your books, it's going to be the beginning of the third line. All right, so here's third finger. Squishy. Squishy. Now stretch your 4. I lifted my first finger up to stretch farther. Now I see a 3, but it has a sharp sign, so I'm going to stretch it high. This natural sign isn't anything unusual. It just means you don't have to stretch your 3 anymore. It goes back to normal. And remembering when you go down on your third string, or the D string for the violin, or the G string for the viola, you're going to play high 2s. All right, I'm going to play straight through. I demonstrated on the viola, so I'm going to play through on the violin. No repeats. All right, here's Bourree, number 6 in book 2. Squishy. Squishy. High 2. High 2. Squishy. High 2. Keep going. Remember squishy 2s. Squish. High 3. Regular 3. Now it sounds like the beginning. Go down one note. All right. Talk to you soon.